All right, so in this demo, I'm going to show you um, how to sew a sleeve with a dart in it. All right, so here's the sleeve. Make sure it's already cut out, and make sure you notch all your notches, and don't forget to mark all your balance lines, so the center line, elbow line, bicep line, and the tip of your dart. Okay, that's already been done. So if I take the pattern, okay, so here it is. All right, I have all my balance lines on there. And then on the other side, I've marked the tip of the dart and just the side that I'll be stitching on for the dart. Remember, the dart is made up of 3 notches here, okay? You have your 2 dart leg notches and the center fold notch, all right? And you only need to, when you fold those together, you only need to mark the dart leg that you'll actually be stitching on, okay? So let's go ahead to the machine and stitch this dart. Okay, we're at the machine. We're going to stitch this dart. So again, I have 3 notches here, my 2 dart legs and then the center fold notch. I'm going to bring my 2 dart leg notches together, line them up like so. My center fold notch is right on the crease now. And I'm going to find my dart tip. And the dart tip, bring that right to the crease. All right. And so now it's ready to stitch. Let's go ahead and stitch that. Back tack at the beginning because this is a permanent stitch. And then what I like to do when I get close to the tip of my dart is just shorten my stitch length and stitch right off. Like so. And that makes it so there's less chance of getting a dimple or a pucker at the tip of your dart. Okay. Now we'll go to the machine or to the ironing board and we'll press this dart down because it's a horizontal dart. We'll press it down towards the hem of the sleeve. Okay, so let's go ahead and press this dart. The hem of my sleeve is down here, so that's what we'll press it towards. I like to put the tip of the dart right on the edge of a sleeve board like so. And now let's press it down. Okay. Should give me a nice press. It did. All right. So there's the dart pressed in. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put in our gathering stitches, our E stitches around our cap. Okay. So let's go back to the machine. Okay. So let's put in our E stitches. We're going to lengthen our stitch to about 3 or 3.5, and we'll do these stitches from the from our directional notch. We'll start right at our directional notch, and we'll stitch around all the way to the other directional notch. Leave yourself long threads, both at the beginning and end. And we're going to stitch at a 1/2 inch right on our seam allowance. We're going to do 2 rows of these, 1.5 inch and then 1/8 of an inch in. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so there's one row of ease stitches. Okay, now we're going to do our second row, and we're going to do it 1/8 of an inch in. And I'll just use the inside toe here as a guide, and let's do our second row. Be very careful not to overlap your stitches when you do this. Because if you do that, it will lock them in place and you won't be able to pull them to ease them. And there we go. Okay, there's our second row. Make sure you put your machine back to a construction stitch. Okay. Now we're going to sew our underarm seam. All right. So that you just put right sides together, fold your sleeve in half, lengthwise essentially, and we'll sew that. And this is 1/2 inch seam allowance here, back tack beginning and end. Okay, there we go. So we've now stitched the inside seam, or the underarm seam of our sleeve. Okay, so let's go back to the cutting board or to the ironing board and press this. All right, we're at the ironing board. Let's go ahead and press this underarm seam open. I'm going to actually clip right here. I have that 1-inch hem at my cuff. I'm going to clip in right at that notch so that I can easily press that up. Okay. We'll do that in a minute, but let's go ahead and finish pressing open that underarm seam. Go. And now I'm just going to press up that 1-inch hem allowance I have. Oops. Just folding it up. Exactly at 1 inch. Okay. All right, there we go. Let's pull it right side out. Okay, so this is what it's looking like so far. Right, there's our dart right there. There's the underarm seam we just sewed. Okay, and here's our ease stitches, 2 rows. Okay, so let's go ahead and set this into the garment. All right, so remember you have directional notches, okay, on both your sleeve and on the armhole of your garment. Okay, we have 1 directional notch in the front, 2 in the back. Here again, 1 in the front, 2 in the back. So you want to make sure you're setting your sleeve into the correct armhole. All right, so the 1 directional notch in the front should line up with the 1 in the front on the armhole, and the 2 on the sleeve should line up with the 2 on the armhole. Okay. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and we're going to find our side seam. Once we know we have the right sleeve, that the sleeve goes into this armhole, which it does, the directional notches match. Find your underarm seam and find your side seam and bring those 2 together. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and line up those 2 seams. And I like to just put 2 pins in there. You can just put 1 if you want. I like to do 2 because my seam allowance, 1 on each side of my seam allowance, so it keeps my seam allowance open. All right. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead inside of my garment, okay, inside the garment part. And I'm going to come up to the top here and find my shoulder seam, which is right here, okay. Grab your sleeve and find the coordinating notch that lines up with that shoulder seam, okay. You may have 2 notches up here. Remember when we fixed our ease, the center line, the ease was a little over to one, or sorry, the shoulder line ended up being in the center of the ease, and therefore that's what we want to line up with our shoulder line, our shoulder seam, okay? So it's not wrong if your center line of your sleeve doesn't line up with your shoulder seam, okay? So let's line up the shoulder notch with your shoulder seam in the garment. And I'm going to put a pin in there. Okay, again, we're working from the inside of the garment now. All right. Now we're going to come back down to our side seam. And I'm going to grab all my threads and pull them to the inside of the garment from the sleeve. And we're going to pin up from side seam. Like so. Right up to your directional notch. And do the same thing on the other side. That was the front. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Let's get these threads in here. Away. And I'll pin up. Okay. Now we've done that, we've trapped all our E's in between our directional notch and our sleeve cap for the front and for the back. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead, and it doesn't matter which side you start on, the front or the back. I'm starting on the front. I'm going to grab my E stitches. I'm going to grab the bobbin side. And I'm going to go ahead and pull them so that the sleeve, which is right now bigger than the armhole, I'm going to pull them so it becomes smaller than the armhole. Okay? Right now this part is the sleeve, and it's bigger than this part, which is the armhole. So let's pull it. Okay? It's now smaller. Now I'm just going to pull it until they're the same length. It looks like right about there. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just lock in around this pin so they can't move. I don't want to lose my E stitches. All right, and now I'm going to spread that ease as evenly as I can throughout. I'm going to bring it up mostly up to the front top of the arm, to the cap. That's really where we need it. It should spread pretty evenly. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and pin that in place. There we go. All right, and now we'll do the other side. So that was the front. Now I'm going to do the back. Same thing. Find my E stitches. Pull them so that the cap, the sleeve side is smaller than the armhole, which it is now. Pull that sleeve, pull it apart again. Okay, so it's the same size and measures to the armhole. And then take your E stitches and lock them in around the pin. And I'm just spreading them throughout this armhole as evenly as I can. And I'll just put some pins in. This part just takes time. There's nothing really to speed it up. It's just practice, really. Okay. There we go. It's all set in. So now we can go back to the machine and just stitch this in. So let's go do that. All right, we're back at the machine. I'm going to slide my armhole. All right, so this is the inside of my garment still. Right now, what you're seeing right here, okay, that's the sleeve underseam, okay? The garment side is against the machine, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and this is, line that up right there. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and stitch this at a 1/2 inch. Back tack beginning in, don't sew over your pins. Here we go. And this takes a little bit of time. You want to go slow. You want to make sure nothing's bunching up under here. It's real easy for the garment to get folded up under there, and you end up sewing in a pleat or a part of your garment that you don't want to. So go slow, continue smoothing out. I don't like sewing over my threads, so I'm just going to kind of pull them out of the way here a little bit. There we go. Okay, and you can start to see my easing. Sometimes I like to ease from the top using the pin, because as you sew, the presser foot kind of pushes those ease stitches up, keeps them from spreading so easily, so I like to kind of just ease them in with my pen as I go. Again, this is just one of those things that takes practice, and eventually you'll get it. And you'll have to keep twisting your garment or rolling your garment as you go as well. Oops. Okay, we're almost to the end here. here we are, back at side seam and underarm seam, back tack. There we go. Cut our threads. And we'll go back to the pattern table. Okay, so here it is sewn in. Let's just check it and make sure no fabric got folded in or puckered or pleated. I'm gonna start at my underarm seam and look. That looks good. And the underarm sleeve and side seam are matching up perfectly. Come around. Nothing's too gathered here. It looks good. Okay, there's my shoulder seam. Okay, there's a little more ease in the back than there was in the front, but it looks good. And back to shoulder seam, or underarm seam. That looks good. All right, so there it is. Let me see if I can spread that out a little. Okay. There it is, sewn into the garment. Okay, and that's the sleeve, and there's the dart right there. All right. And there we go. It's now set in.